All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Today we're taking a deep dive into a topic that's pretty heavy but super important.
Absolutely.
It's all based on that podcast the listener sent us. Putin launches nuclear missile. The madness must stop.
Yeah.
Just the title itself is kind of, well, chilling, right?
You can say that again.
But, we're going to explore this whole, like, what-if scenario with you.
Right.
Not to freak anyone out,
Of course not.
but because, like the podcast host, Alain, points out, sometimes facing, even unthinkable stuff,
Yeah.
it helps us understand how serious things really are in the world right now.
I totally agree. It's about like being prepared,
Yeah.
thinking critically.
Right.
When we analyze these potential outcomes, even the like worst case scenarios,
Yeah.
it helps us grasp the weight of the situation.
Definitely.
And hopefully it encourages us to make smarter choices,
Absolutely. So let's break down this chilling hypothetical scenario that Alain lays out in the podcast.
Yeah.
He doesn't hold back at all. Like, he goes straight for the gut punch, describing what happens immediately after a nuclear missile launch.
Right.
Millions of lives gone, like, instantly. Entire cities wiped out.
It's devastating.
He even talks about, like, this chain reaction of retaliation
Oh, yeah.
that could, like, spiral into a full-blown global nuclear war.
It's a grim picture for sure, no doubt about that. And while it is a what if situation,
Yeah.
it's not outside the realm of possibility.
Right.
Sadly, I mean, look back at Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah.
The pure destructive power of these weapons,
It's unbelievable.
the lingering effects of radiation, those events, I mean, they still cast a long shadow. It's a stark reminder of what we're dealing with here.
Okay, so then Alice goes into what he calls ripple effects.
Right.
He breaks it down into three main categories:
Okay.
global peace,
Mm-hmm.
economic fallout,
Right.
and environmental catastrophe.
And let me tell you, each one is more unsettling than the last.
Oh, for sure.
He's spot on with those categories, though.
Yeah.
The impact wouldn't be isolated. It'd be like this massive shockwave reshaping, the entire planet.
Yeah.
Do you know it?
So, starting with global peace, Alain argues that, like, trust between nations, gone, overnight.
Yeah.
Poof.
Just like that.
Alliances like NATO could crumble.
Oh, yeah.
Smaller nations, they start feeling vulnerable.
Of course.
They might even feel like they have to develop their own nuclear arsenals,
Right.
which would create this, like, terrifying arms race.
And that domino effect is a huge concern.
Yeah.
We've been relying on this idea of mutually assured destruction, or MADI,
Right.
to maintain this a tense peace
Right.
for decades.
For sure.
It's this terrifying logic that actually using these weapons would be, suicidal for everyone.
Right.
But if someone breaks that balance, that fragile balance, the whole global power structure, I mean, it could just collapse.
Right.
And that would lead to, unimaginable chaos.
And it wouldn't stop there. Alain paints this picture of, like, total economic meltdown.
Yeah.
Trade routes disrupted, so store shelves are empty, stock markets crash, food shortages everywhere,
Yeah.
unemployment skyrockets.
It's a global economic nightmare.
Yeah.
But what's really alarming is that the initial shock, that's just the start.
Right.
We need to think about the long-term consequences.
Yeah.
Like runaway inflation that could cripple economies,
Right.
resources, essential ones, becoming super scarce,
Yeah.
and rebuilding vital infrastructure.
Oh, yeah.
It would be this monumental task.
Right.
We could be talking about generations dealing with the fallout.
The economic fallout.
Yeah.
And then there's the environmental catastrophe.
Right.
Which honestly might be the scariest part of all of this.
It's definitely up there.
Alain talks about widespread radiation
Mm-hmm.
making huge areas, like, uninhabitable.
Yeah.
And then there's the terrifying possibility of nuclear winter.
Right.
This global cooling effect.
Yeah.
Triggered by all the smoke and debris blocking out the sun.
And the science behind those claims is really what's unsettling.
Oh, yeah.
Think about, like, the impact on weather patterns.
Yeah.
Delicate weather patterns.
Right?
Entire ecosystems collapsing.
Oh.
And the long-term health problems for people exposed to the radiation.
Right?
It really highlights how connected everything on our planet is.
Yeah.
And how fragile the systems that support life actually are.
It's a lot to absorb, I know. It all sounds pretty bleak, right?
It's heavy stuff.
But Alain doesn't leave us hanging there in despair.
No.
He tries to explain, like, how did we even get to this point?
Yeah, good question.
Where this scenario feels even remotely possible.
Yeah.
And he points to the rising tension between Russia and Europe.
Right.
Specifically, things like economic sanctions, military exercises, and what he calls political posturing.
Yeah, it's all adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that escalation, it rarely happens suddenly.
Right.
It's usually a slow burn.
Yeah.
Think about, like, the Cold War.
Okay.
The mistrust, the provocations back and forth,
Right.
created this climate of constant tension.
Yeah.
Just like what we're seeing now.
Right.
And this type of back and forth, I mean, it can easily get out of control if we're not careful.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about what world leaders do.
Right.
He makes a really, really good point about everyday people too,
Yeah.
We can't just sit back and just hope everything's going to be fine.
It's like he's saying, like, wake up, people.
Yeah.
This isn't someone else's problem. Yeah.
Exactly. It affects us all.
This is everyone's problem.
And that's why I think this whole deep dive thing is so important.
Yeah.
We're not just, like, summarizing a podcast. We're giving you the tools to understand all this.
Yeah.
To form your own opinions.
Right.
And to have those tough conversations.
Yeah, because let's face it, nuclear proliferation.
Right.
Not exactly light dinner conversation.
Right. No, not really.
But knowledge is power. Right.
It really is.
Like, the more we know about this whole situation,
Absolutely.
the more we can, like, actually advocate for change.
Yeah.
Hold our leaders accountable.
It's fascinating to me how Alain's podcast, like, just one guy's voice,
right,
can actually spark such a big conversation.
Yeah.
It shows how powerful information is.
Absolutely.
Individual action.
Yeah.
It's not about blindly agreeing with everything he says,
right,
but using his ideas, as a starting point.
Okay.
To dig deeper, to ask questions.
To think critically.
Exactly. It's not about just passively taking in information.
Yeah.
It's about actively engaging with it.
Okay.
Yeah,
using it to, like, shape our own understanding of the world.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture,
okay,
it's about realizing that we're all in this together.
Right.
Beyond politics, beyond borders, this threat of nuclear war.
It's universal.
It is.
I don't think Alain explicitly says this.
Right.
But I think it's like a core message of the podcast.
Okay.
If we want to prevent this unthinkable thing from happening, we have to change how we think about conflict.
Yeah, that's a powerful insight.
Yeah.
It's so easy to fall into this, like, us versus them mindset.
Especially when things are tense.
Exactly. Yeah. But real progress, real solutions, they come from finding, like, common ground and building those lines of communication.
Global effects that he talks about.
Yeah.
The global peace, the economic devastation, the environmental catastrophe. Like, it's terrifying.
It is.
But how did we even get here?
Right.
To a place where this even feels possible?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
What are the, like, root causes of this tension?
Well, he points to those escalating tensions between Russia and Europe.
Okay.
Specifically mentioning those economic sanctions imposed on Russia as, like, a major pressure point.
Okay, yeah. He also talks about that increase in military exercises.
Oh, yeah. It's like a show of force.
Yeah, like they're flexing.
You're right.
Trying to intimidate each other.
It's giving me, like, Cold War vibes.
Yeah.
And don't forget what he calls political posturing.
Oh, right.
It's aggressive rhetoric.
Yeah.
Public displays of force, all that.
Right. It's like they're playing chicken.
Yeah.
But with incredibly high stakes.
Exactly.
It's almost like everyone's forgotten how to communicate.
Right.
And instead of talking, they're just yelling and making threats.
Not exactly a good way to achieve peace.
Not at all.
And while Alain doesn't, get into the whole history of it,
right,
it's worth remembering that these tensions go way back. Understanding the historical context is crucial.
Yeah, for understanding why things are so tense right now.
Exactly.
So we've got this mix of, like, historical grievances, economic pressure, military buildup,
right,
aggressive rhetoric.
Yeah. It's all creating this climate of fear and mistrust.
Yeah.
And in that kind of environment, even a small miscalculation could lead to something catastrophic.
It's like walking a tightrope.
Yeah.
Over an abyss.
With everyone holding their breath.
Hoping no one makes a wrong move.
Exactly.
And, Alain ends the podcast with this, like, passionate plea
for
dialogue and diplomacy. And He urges people to be more informed, more engaged.
More involved.
Yeah. He hammers home the point that we can't just leave this to the politicians.
Right. We all have a role to play.
We all have a part in this.
I think what he's getting at is that diplomacy, it's not just something that happens in meeting rooms between world leaders.
Yeah, starts with us.
Exactly.
Starts with having these tough conversations.
Right.
Understanding different perspectives. Demanding more from our leaders.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
What can people actually do to push for that diplomacy and de-escalation, you know?
Yeah.
How can we make our voices heard?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this deep dive can actually offer something more.
Okay.
We've talked about the problem,
right,
the potential consequences.
Yeah.
But now let's think about solutions.
I feel like we've been like tiptoeing through a minefield this whole time.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It is.
But Elaine's point is like we can't just ignore this, you know?
We can't bury our heads in the sand.
So if diplomacy is the way forward,
right,
how can we, like everyday people, actually make that happen? It just seems so big.
I get it.
What can we actually do?
It's a good question, and it's easy to feel powerless.
Right. When it comes to global politics and all that.
For sure.
But I think we can do more than we realize.
Okay.
It starts with staying informed, going beyond just the headlines,
right,
seeking out different perspectives.
So more than just like scrolling through the news and freaking out.
Exactly. We need to actually look for in-depth analysis.
Okay.
Understand all sides of the story.
So informed citizenry is key.
Yes.
But what about like actually doing something?
Yeah.
What can we do beyond just talking and thinking?
Well, we can support organizations that are working towards peace and diplomacy.
Yeah.
There are a lot of groups out there dedicated to resolving conflict, promoting dialogue, advocating for peaceful solutions.
So like donating or volunteering?
Even small contributions can help.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about contacting our elected officials?
Oh, absolutely.
Does that actually do anything?
Because they represent us, so letting them know our concerns, urging them to prioritize diplomacy.
Okay.
That can make a difference.
Yeah.
They need to know that we care about these issues.
So emailing them, calling them.
Yeah.
Going to town hall meetings.
Exactly. Make your voice heard.
What about protests?
Peaceful protests and demonstrations can be really powerful.
Okay.
They raise awareness.
Yeah.
They put pressure on governments.
To actually do something.
Right.
Thinking back to Alain's podcast and all the scary stuff he talked about.
Right.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed.
I know.
Hopeless, even.
And we're not powerless.
You're right. We're not.
And change takes time.
Yeah.
It takes effort.
Right.
And we have to stay engaged.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's discouraging.
This whole deep dive has been a lot.
It has.
From fear and anxiety to, honestly, a bit of hope.
Yeah.
Elaine's call to action, it was a good reminder.
Well,
we all have a role to play here.
You do.
In building a better future.
Absolutely.
So for everyone listening,
yeah,
what groups or initiatives resonate with you?
Right.
What can you do, big or small,
today
to support these efforts?
Work towards peace.
Keep learning, stay engaged, and never underestimate the power of your voice.
Your voice matters.
And on that note,
we'll
wrap things up.
See you next time.
Until then, keep diving deep.
Keep those questions coming.
And we'll see you on the next deep dive.